Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope you are staying safe and healthy and enjoying this beautiful, beautiful and hot spring day. Last year was around this time in May that we started this show. And I remember myself being so nervous and concerned about the outcome. But that was all we could do, right? That was all we could do to stay connected and be together during this pandemic. And as everything is up, we decided to continue and promote and bring up more of our talented artists. So it's kind of our show's anniversary today. And for that, we have a very special guest today. Someone that most of you may know from the show and from now on. She used to be our technical lady until recently, and she moved on to work to pursue her job somewhere else as artist and art historian. Besides, she's one of the youngest artists that we had in this show so far. All right, I'm so excited today to introduce our today artist, Sarah Isenberg, if I pronounce your last name correctly, Sarah. Sarah, welcome to our show. Welcome to your show, I should say.
Thank you so much, Farrin. It's so great to be a guest on the show today instead of doing the behind the scenes work. It's really exciting to be here. I am NOAA's former digital content coordinator. I helped form this show almost a year ago with Farrin, and I'm the person who has been emailing you and posting on Instagram and posting on Facebook up until February. That was all of me. So it's really nice to be here. When I am not at my day job, which is now at the Whitney Museum here in New York City, I am an artist and an art historian. I specialize in esoteric art at the turn of the 20th century, specifically the Swedish artist Hilma af Klint, who I wrote my undergraduate thesis on. And the art that I make is mostly fiber and textile based. It includes embroidery, sewing, needlepoint, and I think in the future I would also really like to learn knitting and crochet. So that's something to look forward to in my upcoming art practice.
So is this something you used to do from beginning as a kid, or this is being artist is something started as when you start college?
Well, it's really funny that you bring that up because I've definitely always been oriented towards craft making as a kid. And I know that some people might not necessarily consider that, a fine art practice, but I think I've definitely, been creative ever since I was young. I have a really strong memory of, loving to draw, loving to paint, making beads. I have really positive memories as a child of, making beaded necklaces with my grandma and her trying to teach me how to knit. I never really learned because it was really hard for me as a kid, but I think, like I mentioned, that's something I would like to get to learn in the future. But I think my, formal art practice really only began in college. And that's when I really started to explore different medium and, consider myself an artist. But it's only in the past year that I've really discovered myself as like as a textile and as a fiber artist. So I think it's definitely been a journey for me.
Yeah. How come you become interested in textile and fiber art? What actually pursue you to go into this media?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I've always had a love of fashion. So I think, drawing on my love of fashion and being able to create art that I can I can wear, that I can use. You know, having something that's like tactile, that is not only like a beautiful object, but like a useful object. You know, for example, this coat that I did. I think that's really where my inspiration, a lot of it comes from. But I think for this specific piece, for this house coat that I made, I really see it as like a collaborative piece, because the quilt, actually, it was a found object. I, you know, bought it on eBay. I didn't make the quilt part myself. So I, you know, took this found object, this quilt, and I fashioned it into something functional, something wearable. And I think really my interest in that is something that comes from like wanting to be collaborative. You know, the person who made this quilt, I don't know who it is. I don't know, you know, where it came from or any story behind it, but it looks handmade. And I think that's really, I think a handmade object is so special. And I wanted to be able to, you know, give this object a second life as something. I mean, a quilt is functional to begin with, but to give it something that has function and meaning for myself. And, you know, quilting is traditionally seen as like women's work, as something feminine. And I think, you know, repurposing that into something, you know, fashion is also seen as something feminine, but in a more modern, more contemporary way. I think it is a lot of, you know, where I also get my inspiration from. I think, you know, fiber art, textile art, craft has been seen as, you know, something not as elevated as, you know, painting and sculpture, because it's been more feminine, and more traditionally, you know, done by women. So I think I'm really inspired by that. You know, those women artists who were working in textiles, were working in fashion, in quilt making and sewing and embroidery, who weren't really able to rise up into, you know, what we see as high art, and weren't able to really be recognized for their contributions to craft. I think that's another big thing that I'm really interested in as an artist.
Do you had any influence in this particular subject?
Um, I think something that was really influential on me, I can't remember the name of the exhibition, but when I was about 13 or 14, I visited the National Museum of Women in the Arts in Washington, D.C., which is a really gorgeous and special museum, but they had an exhibition of quilts on view. And I should have looked this up beforehand, because that's really what sparked my interest, I think, in an academic way, in craft, in quilt making and sewing, to be seeing those kinds of objects in a museum. That was pretty radical and new for me. So I think that was like the first place that I remember, you know, thinking like, oh, craft and crafting and these, you know, traditional like feminine arts really can be high art, and they really can be recognized on a grand scale. And, you know, they can be seen as, you know, in the same rooms as paintings, as sculptures, as Frida Kahlo, as Mary Cassatt. I think that was really an important moment for me. So I think that's probably where my first inspiration came from. I think something that I've been inspired really lately, and maybe I'm biased because, you know, I work at the Whitney Museum, but we have this amazing show right now called Making Knowing Craft and Art, 1950 to 2019, which has a lot of amazing contemporary artists and craftspeople like Ruth Asawa, who does weaving. She does like metal wire weaving sculptures, which are so gorgeous. But I think the main thing that I've really been drawing a lot of inspiration from recently is a work called Kitchen by an artist named Liza Liu. It's a life-size replica of a kitchen, but it's entirely made out of beads. And it's a huge, gorgeous installation, and it's got all these amazing details. And I think, while I haven't made anything nearly that large or nearly that intricate, I think about that piece constantly, and I think that it's really, you know, consciously and subconsciously, a big influence in my work, in my art.
Wow, interesting. So being around art, you know, has a lot of advantage. So have you had any training for this, for fiber art? You took any classes, or you had any training for this?
I'm gonna say no. I'm pretty self-taught. I mean, I took a sewing class for like a couple weeks when I was in middle school, but I don't think a lot of the skills that I got from that I still retain. I started as a fiber artist, as a textile artist, doing embroidery actually during the pandemic, and that I was self-taught, and my mom also taught me. So there's this really wonderful intergenerational connection in my art because she was the one who taught me how to embroider, and you know, she loves to embroider. She's you know, embroidered things for me and my sisters, and that's, you know, something like a hobby of hers that she loved to do as a teenager and when she was my age too. So I mean, that feels really, really special to have learned that from her. But everything else, needlepoint, my grandma does needlepoint, but I taught myself how to needlepoint
Yeah. So
in the
but you
pandemic.
were around it since you were a
Yeah.
kid. You know,
Yeah, it's definitely been very present in my life. This was actually the first embroidery project that I did, which may sound surprising because it's so large and so all encompassing. But I mean, I did like a couple practice projects before this, but this was really the first big project I took on. And I started this in almost exactly a year ago as well. I started this around the same time as you started the show because it was
I
so
remember
fun.
sometimes you were doing something in, you know, when we.
Yeah, when we would have meetings, I would be working on this. I this is a project that I started, yeah, in early May because one of my favorite artists who I love, Nikki de Saint-Phal, she's an amazing French artist. She created the Tarot Garden, Il Giardino dei Tarocchi in Italian, in Tuscany. And it's a huge, gorgeous sculpture park. If you want to flip to the next slide, I've got some images
Okay.
of it. Yeah, you can see it over here. It's a huge mosaic where every sculpture is representative of one of the major arcana in the tarot deck. So it's a gorgeous, gorgeous sculpture park, and it was one of my favorite places that I've visited in the world. You can see her drawing of, you know, her concept for it. And in May, you know, we were in quarantine, we were in the pandemic. You know, nobody was going anywhere, nobody was traveling, and I was really missing travel and the experience of seeing art in person. So I wanted to, you know, recreate that in some way for myself. And she was supposed to last spring have an exhibition at PS1, MoMA PS1 here in New York, but unfortunately because of the pandemic, that had to be postponed. And so I kind of took the, you know, the missing art viewing in person, the missing travel, and, you know, the postponement of the exhibition and all of my feelings surrounding that. And I, you know, found this image, which is, you know, if you go back to the other side, you can see me with the actual image, yeah, and the jumpsuit that I embroidered on. So I took that image and I traced it on the back of this jumpsuit, and I embroidered like the entire sculpture garden. And I worked on this piece probably every day for almost 2 months. And it was difficult, and it was so rewarding. And it's truly, I think, my favorite piece of art I've ever made because it has so much special memory, you know, imbued in it. My memory of my trip to the tarot garden, my memory of you know, the early pandemic, and kind of like my feelings, you know, of sadness and of grief and like loss of, you know, being able to, you know, travel and see friends and look at art. And then this really positive memory of feeling really triumphant of getting to wear this jumpsuit to the exhibition when it opened earlier this spring. So I think, you know, I think this is really special, and kind of tie it back to what I was saying about Liza Lu's kitchen piece. She worked on her kitchen piece for 5 years. It took her 5 years to make. And while this did not take me 5 years, it took me 3 months. I associate my feelings of like creating this and working on this every day for an extended period of time as akin to her experience of creating her kitchen every day for 5 years. So yeah, this is the piece that I'm definitely, you know, most proud of that I've made.
What's people reaction? I mean, I'm sure you wear this in public, right? Anyone ask you, or what's their reaction when they see you wearing this?
Yeah. Well, when I wore it to the exhibition, you know, some of the museum guards, people who got us our tickets, they all were so excited about it. They were like, "This is so cool! Like, I can't believe you made this, you know, because I would tell them the story about, you know, why I made it and that I worked on it every day. And, you know, that they obviously were able to recognize it because it was a piece that was in the exhibition. So having that, you know, excitement and that recognition was pretty cool, because I, you know, was able to wear it to a place where people like knew what it was. But sometimes when I wear it out, obviously not to the exhibition, people do have a lot of questions about it because it's obviously a pretty unique piece. So yeah, I do. When I was in the bookshop that day at the museum, somebody asked me if I had my own fashion label and if I would make more. And I said, I don't think I can ever do this again. I don't think I can ever put myself through making something like this for, you know,
Yeah,
every day
I'm
for
sure
3
you
months.
can do that. I'm sure you can do it, but do this. But every piece is unique, you know, and it's time
Exactly.
consuming too. But definitely you can do it, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
you do this gorgeous work.
Yeah.
Don't say
Incredibly time
no.
consuming.
Of course you can. Yeah, it's very beautiful. I mean, I saw you doing something, but I didn't know you do this.
Yeah. This was, my mom would call it my pandemic project, but the
Oh,
pandemic ended up outlasting my project. So I don't know if that's a good name for it anymore.
yeah, it's a lot of opportunity brought for people, like, you know, to just sit down and, you know, do the thing they were love to do and have free
Yeah,
time, right? So,
exactly.
all right, let's go forward with some of your other project you did in this beautiful fabric work. So,
Yeah. This was a series of detachable collars that I made. I started this project actually. I didn't intend for it to have so much meaning behind it, but it actually kind of, you know, has ended up that way. I started making these collars the week of the election in November. I started making these because I just needed to do something. I couldn't really get out of the house because it was still the pandemic. And I just needed to take my mind off the waiting and the not knowing, you know, in the days between people actually casting their votes and the votes being tallied. So I really started the collars to, I guess, the right side of the screen, that set of 4 collars were the first that I made. And I just kind of made them for friends. Actually, the one on the very bottom with the orange flowers and the orange gingham is the one that I made for Nawa's very own Emma, the new digital content coordinator. So I just started making them, you know, as a way to have a little project that I could do very easily and very quickly and make multiples of for people. And then they kind of grew in popularity from there. And I started doing, you know, more customizable ones where people could choose what fabric, what trim, you know, what colors, what type of ties that they would want on their collar. And I think when they started becoming more popular and more customizable, um, that's when I really started seeing them as like a form of a wearable sculpture. I didn't really look at them that way in the beginning, but um, I think it kind of became that for me, which I think is a really unique way of looking at, you know, at a textile work, because at the end of the day, it is sculpture. It's a 3D object. So this is, you know, a customizable 3D object that a person can wear. And then when they start wearing it, when they put it on, it becomes a performance.
yes.
So, you know, how this like really simple idea suddenly became like a really actually like deep and like art historical and like entrenched thing that I didn't intend for it to end up that way. But I think maybe that's just like my art historian brain speaking and thinking too deeply about something that, you know, maybe at the end of the day is
That's the
just a
beauty of
collar.
art, you know, that's the beauty of art. What you think, it's completely changed after you create something, you know. I think I have some video, some short
Yeah,
video here if I can. Yeah, let's
do
just
a little
watch.
video.
Yes, you do one of these.
Oh, it's got no sound. You can turn the sound off.
Okay, so it doesn't have.
I go to bed feeling the same way. I ain't nothing but tired. Yeah, I'm just tired and bored with myself. Little baby, I think you just a little help. You can't start a fire. You can't start a fire without a spark. This guns were higher. Even if we're just dancing in the dark.
Beautiful.
Didn't realize there would be that music part in the background. I guess I forgot about that. But I think, yeah, that video just shows like, the process in a really simplified way. And it's nice because you get to see what it looks like on. I didn't have too many photos of, of somebody wearing them. So I thought the video would be a really good way to show like the versatility of, this object.
How long it takes for one of these to make?
I think about 30 minutes from start to finish, from really like cutting out the fabric to like putting the final touches and like snipping off all the little threads. So, just like long enough where like it can hold my attention and, I can make multiples of them, in one sitting, but not so labor intensive where I can only do like, one per day. So it was really good in that way, at that time.
Yeah, and then very beautiful, and it's like piece of art which you can put it on and take it off. You
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so let's talk about some other work of you. Of course, we have so many.
This one's pretty simple. It's a frog wearing a strawberry as a hat, but actually this comes from a filter that you can put on your face on Instagram. I think a lot of like, my sillier ideas for, art projects are just like entrenched in pop culture in that way, which I think it's really interesting to have that juxtaposition of something so hyper digital and so hyper modern on, it as an embroidered object. So I think it's a really funny juxtaposition there. I think, a lot of my projects have been really like serious. And I think it's okay as an artist to explore just like silly feelings and feelings of joy and, pop culture. I think not everything has to have an incredibly important or deep meaning, because this one doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. That's definitely, and that's the same thing, or like.
Yeah, this one's another similar one. It's Kermit the Frog from the Muppets, dressed up as the lead singer of my favorite band, David Byrne of the Talking Heads. There's a really funny video of that the Muppets made of him singing one of their songs. So I thought that would also be a really funny and silly thing to embroider. So that's my current work in progress. That's what I'm working on right now.
Yeah. So it's gonna be fill up all the jacket and everything.
Yeah, I'm gonna fill up all the jacket and the pants, and then at the top it's you can kind of see like a little bit of where I've sketched it out at the top. It's gonna say "Same as it ever was," which is a lyric from the song from the video. So
all right. Yeah, there are some things. So I can't wait to see the finish work.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to your other canvas and fabric work, of course.
Yeah. So this was my first needlepoint project. Actually, this is the first time I've ever worked with yarn as a medium, which was really cool. Needlepoint is really similar in concept to embroidery, which I think is why I was able to pick it up so quickly and without a long learning process. It uses like a plastic like mesh canvas with little holes in the way that a fabric would, except it's more rigid. So, you can only place the needle in so many areas. Rather in fabric, it's much more freeform. So this is a needlepoint project that I turned into a purse, and it looks like a basket of strawberries. I'm an art historian first, so I think subconsciously this is probably a little bit inspired by like Dutch still lifes and still life painting, and the idea of food and art and fruit and art, but then also my own personal notions of having art be a functional object and be wearable and be useful. So I think this one was really fun for me, and it was nice to get out of my comfort zone a little bit with embroidering and sewing and try something new with needlepoint.
Very beautiful, and as you said, functional, right? Okay, so basically doing fabric and all those textile, there are some other type of art also Sarah pursues. So let's talk about that. We don't have much time, so we have to actually move faster. So would you explain some of the printmaking and some other work you do?
I can do my printmaking really quickly. I learned printmaking in a class in college. This was the first print that I ever made. It also uses that same Talking Heads song lyric, same as it ever was from, my work in progress, Kermit the Frog embroidery piece. It's just, a really rudimentary, you can see that this is definitely my first print, just a really rudimentary thing I made, but I was really proud of it at the time, and I still am. So I think that this was, it was really fun to learn something new. And I've tried screen printing a couple different times, as you'll see. And I've really enjoyed it as a medium.
Yeah, I tried once or twice.
Yeah. This was probably my favorite thing that I've done for screen printing. In 2018, California suffered like a terrible, terrible wildfire, and the summer camp that I had gone to for 10 summers since I was 7 years old, unfortunately, burned down in the fire. So I made this print as a fundraiser to help them, get back on their feet. And so the print says, "You're now entering a magical place. Forget what you have learned," which was a sign on one of the special areas at camp. So I did this as a fundraiser. I think I ended up making over 200 prints, which was, so incredible. And I think we raised over $2,000 for the camp. So I think that this is like, this is really special to me as well, because, it was able to have like, a charitable element to it. And I was able to, really take my feelings of extreme sadness over like the loss of an incredibly special place and channel it into art making, and then sharing that art with people who also were feeling the same feelings that I was about sadness and about loss and, about grief over, this place. But I think that this imbues like a really positive memory that people have of the camp. So I think that this and the Tarot Garden jumpsuit are probably my two favorite pieces that I've made of all time.
Very, very touching. And I see some more of your printmaking and in paper. We don't have much time, so I want to move on to if you have something also digital art. If you don't mind, talk about this a little bit and before we end our show.
Yeah, this was for a digital art class that I took in college. Actually, my final semester of college. This piece is called Institutional Critique, and it's inspired by the artist Jenny Holzer, who uses art and like guerrilla text and like writing to make a statement about culture and politics, etc. So she's done in the past. She's projected some of her writing onto buildings, and I was really inspired by that. So I kind of took the idea of institutional critique, with her writing, but also like critiquing a physical institution, as in like buildings and places. And I invited students to submit their critiques of, the institution of our college. So you can see things like lack of diversity, we need more students of color, these types of things in their critiques. And then I took that, and then you can see in this video, I took that in like kind of guerrilla style, inspired by Jenny Holzer. I projected students' critiques onto the physical infrastructure of the academic building. So this is the school's library. This is where it got projected onto. So I think it was definitely my most meaningful and my most like social justice oriented work that I've done, because I was really like allowing students to be anonymous but to share their voice in the issues that they've been having on campus. And I think it was really the last thing I did all of college. I turned in my thesis. This is my last final. It was the last thing I did, so that it was like, it felt kind of good for that to be the last thing, the last part of my education.
It's very beautiful, and all your work are so so functional and so touching.
Thank you.
Makes it kind of more meaningful. So this is how it was displayed in that in library, right?
Yeah. So this is how it was displayed. And then just over here, I have a little bit of my art historical research. As I mentioned in the beginning, my specialty is esoteric art in the 20th century with a focus on the Swedish artist Hilma af Klint. So my undergraduate art history thesis was written on her.
Yeah. Yeah, I love her work. They're so beautiful and
She's
so
amazing.
colorful. Anyway, do you have any last word before we end our show, Sarah?
Um, I don't think I have anything else to say, except it's just been an absolute pleasure coming to be on the other side of this show and to really talk with you, Farrin. I don't really talk about my own practice so much, but so it's been really nice to kind of like look inward and, you know, really think about myself as an artist versus an art historian.
Yeah, I didn't know this side of you. I knew you did some kind of art, and I saw you often you do something, but I never saw your work. So I was so excited to see what you're doing and see this beautiful, functional, and meaningful work, Sarah. It was really pleasure to have you in our show. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Farrin.
Okay, thank you. So I guess this is conclude our show today, and this was, as I said, our anniversary, and it was really surprising anniversary, at least for me. I hope to see you all again next month, in the third Friday of June.